A key component of our Christian walk is in the area of loving and caring for others enough to sacrifice for their good. This is especially true in the dynamics of family life. This week we see the Apostle Paul continuing his teaching on this subject in Ephesians 6, which harkens back to the commandment for children to honor their fathers and mothers. And now, here's Pastor Todd.
Thank you for joining us for the midweek message today. Last week we talked about Ephesians chapter 5. And in chapter 5, we talked about the husband and the wife and the sacrifice in that relationship. The husband sacrificing for the wife and the wife sacrificing for the husband. As we talk about further dynamic of Christianity, Christianity is about caring for others enough to sacrifice for them. Today we're going to talk about the way the children are a part of the family dynamic. So in Ephesians chapter 6, it says this: "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you and you may live long on the earth. And you fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord." There is a promise made in the Ten Commandments that if we will honor our father and mother, we will have extended life. It is a part of having this relationship with God. It's the first commandment with promise. I love how it says that. And it's a promise that is made, and I believe God keeps it. Honoring our father and mother is the expectation that God has for His children. And I don't think that's just when the children are young. I believe that extends throughout the lifetime. I believe that God has expectation that His children would honor Him in the same way He expects our children to honor their parents. It's taught this lesson in Deuteronomy chapter 6. Deuteronomy chapter 5 has the Ten Commandments as we know them. And then Deuteronomy chapter 6 is where Moses is talking to the children of Israel. And he's talking to them about the importance of following God in their relationships. And at that time, it was purely from a law-giving relationship, but then it becomes more than that. And so in Deuteronomy chapter 6, if you'll bear with me, I want to share with you what this says. "Now this is the commandment, and these are the statutes and judgments which the Lord your God has commanded to teach you, that you may observe them in the land which you are crossing over to possess, that you may fear the Lord your God, to keep all His statutes and His commandments, which I command you, you and your son and your grandson, all the days of your life, and that your days may be prolonged." Now notice this. The prolongment is in the following of the commandments of God. The relationship with God is meant to enhance life, not just extend it in length of years, but extend it in breadth and width to make life worth living. So as we talk about this idea, he goes on to teach these children of Israel, "Therefore hear, O Israel, and be careful to observe it, that it may be well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, as the Lord God of your fathers has promised you, a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. And these are the words which I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit down in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise up. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and your gates." So the expectation is that the individual would not only follow God themselves, but that they would teach this following of God to their children and their grandchildren, so that it may be well with them as well. So God's expectation is that once we have achieved relationship with Him, the expectation is that we would share it with our family members. It's this sacrifice of our time, our attention, our abilities, our gifts, so that others can know God. He wants them to know God with all that they are. Then, as we move back to Ephesians chapter 6, Paul is talking about these dynamics of relationship. So you have the dynamic relationship between the wife to the husband for the wife, and now the child to the parents. So the next dynamic in that household would be the bondservants and masters. Now, understand, this is not a support of slavery. This is not saying that slavery is right. This is not saying that slavery is acceptable to the Lord. In fact, if you go back and Jesus says, what part of the greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself, you cannot make me believe that slavery is a part of that answer. If you love your neighbor as yourself, the last thing you would do is make yourself a slave to someone else. You see, I don't think slavery was ever a part of God's plan. However, in this society, it was commonplace. In this society, it was something that they saw on a regular basis. Whether it was an indentured servanthood or a bond servant, as we're talking about here, to where a person could not pay their bills, and so therefore they bonded themselves out or made themselves a servant to other people until the bill was paid, or whether they were captured. One of the things the Romans would do if they captured you is make you a slave in some part of their kingdom. Often conquered nations would become slaves within the Roman Empire. So slavery is not here, hear me say, slavery is not encouraged. Slavery is recognized. And in this relationship, the person who has bonded themselves to another person or become a slave to another, how do they fit into Christianity? And what's remarkable is within the church walls, a slave had the same rights in Christianity as their master did. It's amazing that you see that. But here, as we look at this, we're talking about the way in which a person shares the gospel, which a person is an ambassador for Christ, as he's going to say later on in this same chapter. He is talking about being a witness for God. And here again is this idea of sacrifice. And the sacrifice is made in order that others may see the power of God in their life, even in the most unfair and inhumane parts of the society. So in verse 5, bondservants, be obedient to those who are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in sincerity of heart as to Christ, not with eye service as men pleasers, but as bondservants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, with good will doing service, as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that whatever good anyone does, he will receive the same from the Lord, whether he is a slave or free. And you masters, do the same things to them, giving up threatening, knowing that your own master also is in heaven, and there is no partiality with him. What an incredible dynamic that is required. What an incredible dynamic that is requested. First, that the slave would not simply believe that they are serving another master, but they are serving God when they serve the people in that household. Whether they're treated right or they're treated wrong, they are not serving the individual, they are serving God. And he says, give it more than eye service. In other words, give it more than a passing glance. Don't just make nice when they're around and then be ugly later on. He's saying, pour yourself into it. Pour out yourself for the person that you are in service to. In our society today, there are a lot of jobs within the service industry, whether it be cleaning houses, whether it be serving tables, whatever place that you may find yourself in service. And for whatever reason, our society has become, I think, much more hard towards people of service. I mean, it's surprising how people act towards one another just because they feel like they deserve the right, I guess, to be served by the person. But it's a chance when someone else is ugly to you and you're in that position of giving service to be a witness for Christ, when you are being led into being angry, led into being frustrated, led into a negative, turning it to a positive and saying, I'm going to serve them above and beyond. Not because they deserve it, because they don't, but because I am serving the Lord. I'm going to serve them the way that I serve Christ. That's what he's talking to these slaves about. And to the masters, and I love this, he turns this relationship back on sacrifice towards the slave. And he says, he's basically saying, treat your slave fairly. Not with threatening of a beating, but instead, treat your slave fairly. Treat them like another human being. Treat them as, love your neighbor as yourself. He says, because God's watching. In the same way that the slave is serving God, you too are serving God, and you have a master in heaven, and he takes no partiality. He's not going to say you're rich and therefore I'm going to let that go. He takes note of what you do and how you treat people. So when we talk about this idea of service, we serve others in any type of relationship, not because they deserve it or have earned it or are better than we are. We serve others in hopes that they see Christ in us. It's not easy to do, especially when the husband drives you a little crazy, or the wife drives you a little crazy, or your parents are driving you a little crazy. But I want to tell you it's necessary, because the relationship you have with them may be the key to them having a relationship with God. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great week.